Good evening, good day, wherever you are in the world. We are today with Charlotte, my good friend and colleague, Charlotte from UK. And Charlotte is very excited to talk to you about one of her creation with two other colleagues around the world, with Italy, Nicola Laterza, and also Mendel, our colleague from China, to introduce you to the Mind-Body Mastery Box. So I'm going to say a few words about Charlotte. She originally trained in finance. She moved into teaching when she was working in Hong Kong. And as a mother of a child with special needs, she looked for help and solutions. And then she met Darlene Smith in UK, a woman coming from South Africa. But so Darlene is a vision therapist, and Darlene helped Charlotte to understand the link between child development and cognitive skills. And both partnered in 2012 to create a company named Fit to Learn. Charlotte holds the National Professional Qualification for Head Teachers and is a fellow of the Royal Society of Arts. Since 2012, Charlotte and Darlene have trained in the Tomatis method and are up to level 4, which is the top grade that we can go through. And she's involved in different groups to work on mental health and education, which is very much her passion. In 2016, Charlotte won the prize for Best Case Study at the Tomatis Paris Convention. And in 2018, she co-authored the book, The Maze of Learning, Developing Motor Skills with Melina Haley and Darlene Smith. And her latest book, which was published in late 2023, is The Maze of Learning of Sound. And a maze of learning of sound, which is your superpower. Tonight, Charlotte will introduce us to you the Mind and Body Mastery Box, which is a beautiful toolbox that she's developed, as I said before, with our two other colleagues from the Tomatis group. And if you have any questions, Charlotte will respond to them at the end of the presentation. But please, if you have your questions, please write them in the Q&A. And so at the end of the presentation with Charlotte, we'll go through those questions as much as we can and hopefully answer your questions. So Charlotte, thank you so much for your time today and in your busy schedule. And the floor is yours.
Thank you. And thank you all for coming and listening. And what I want to introduce you to is our box of resources. And during lockdown, Mandel and Nicola and I talked about why there wasn't widespread take-up of really supporting child development very thoroughly. And I said that the experience I'd had as a parent was schools did not know how to transition children from having got their sound working properly, their vision working properly, their motor skills working properly, to move that into subject knowledge. And that what we needed to do was make sure that everything was happening in the brain and that people had really mastered using all their motor skills and senses together and being able to translate those into actual subjects. And being us, we want to do it in a fun way. So we went through various cognitive puzzles we liked, and we eventually came up with a program. So we have a handbook, and in a minute I will start sharing that on screen, because really going through the handbook tends to be the most useful thing to do so you can understand what it is. But it is trying to get the idea that child development actually needs to be the central purpose of education for all, to be honest, and that we ought to be checking it in everyone. So let me get it up on screen and share it. So hopefully you can see this. This is the front cover, the exciting book, and hopefully I can go down it. Yes. So what we do with it is about mastery. And to be perfectly honest, I was working with this with an 85-year-old this week, helping her bring back together senses, etc. It is useful for really all ages. And we start out the aim being just play. And then really post 7, things get slightly more serious. but it is always playful. It's always exploration. It's always trying to build skills that people find attractive. Also built into the box is assessment. So there are tools there so you can assess how well a child is doing on a particular task, but you can also do a general assessment and you can build some of the things into your normal assessment. Does that make sense? So that I'm assuming most people here are having some sort of look at motor skills, they're having some sort of look at sound, and some of you will also be looking at what's happening with the eyes, and then how a child brings it all together. And you need to know where you are. I was chatting to another practitioner earlier this week saying you have to not just do the activities, you need to monitor, well, how is that changing things? And that's very powerful evidence, particularly things like the Tansley test. It really can change people's perception. So in the manual, I bore people to death about human development because we do not understand human development well enough, and it is about supporting it. And this is very much a box to go with therapies. So if we want to get humans to the state where their sound, their vision, their motor skills all work together. And as we go through, I tell people that the first thing they've got to get sorted is sound. So I personally wouldn't start using the resource box till we've done some sound therapy. And I personally wouldn't touch anything but Tamati's sound therapy. I want to get people up to a stage where we're processing sound reasonably well. And in the box, to aid that, we've also added a metronome, because being able to work to a beat is very, very important foundation skill. And you will see if you do sound therapy that people's skills with the metronome get very much faster and better. And it's quicker to get the metronome skills going with sound therapy than without. I also bore to death on postural control. Every time I'm training people, after a bit, the clients have dropped. And I'm saying to them, look, if you are not upright, you cannot model good posture to your clients. If you're not upright, your own senses are going to be a bit off. As well as good postural control, we tell them we've got to have bilateral integration of motor skills. You've got to be able to go across your midline, left and right sides have to work together. If those are not happening, there's a problem with primitive reflexes. We need to go back and sort it. We know from Melelio's research on brains that if you don't get the primitive reflexes in place, you're not getting the asymmetries of the brain developing properly. So we need to get that going. We need to get all the circuits working properly. Nasal breathing is really important. Humans breathe through the nose. They do not breathe through their mouths. And when they breathe nasally, it changes the way they digest oxygen. It opens up the pathways in the head. It makes space for teeth development. If it's flat, it reduces it. And we need to look for trauma, because when someone is traumatized, they close down their senses. So same thing, we are working through. So I tell everybody to go away and breathe and also think about their heart rate. Because before you even start using the box, if you haven't got someone who's calm and rhythmic and breathing, it is very hard for them to be doing anything in their brain. We have to get people to a good calm state, because if they're not, it's very hard for them to learn. I don't know what's happening in the rest of the world, but in Britain, we are dysregulating mothers on an industrial scale at the moment, threatening them because the children won't go into school. They then threaten the mothers. The whole family is frightened and dysregulated. We need to come to calm. The calmer and more in tune we all are, the more likely we are to think. And we can use things like the metronome, rhymes, and so on. Everything's going to keep the sound processing working well. And nice heart rate variance, so we're not pumping cortisol to the brain. And we, give people hacks that if you're thinking of a happy thought, breathing rhythmically, you should have a coherent heart rate. And that motor skills aren't really properly developed if we're supporting them till 7. I've got some clients in a terrible position in their teens whose motor skills haven't been developed and their backs are arcing horribly. So by 3.5, primitive reflexes ought to be integrated. So when the children arrive at infant school, we shouldn't be rushing to handwriting. We should be checking primitive reflexes. To be honest, I wouldn't even bother checking them. I would get everyone doing primitive reflex exercises to make sure they're integrated. The next year, I would get the year ones to work through with the reception class. And I would keep checking primitive reflexes through the school years, because primitive reflexes can re-emerge with physical trauma and also emotional trauma. It's a good sign that something has happened to the child, and you want to keep these things integrated so that the child can learn. Postural control isn't going to be there till 7, but we need to support it and we need to get it working properly. And we need to practice it, because people don't know how to stand and sit up and so on. And getting left and right sides of the body working together, because you can't do some of these puzzles if we haven't got left and right working together. If we haven't got the feet arches raised, our posture can't work properly. So all of those things need to happen, and you'll be glad to know we wrote an exciting book on how to make motor skills work. So you can buy that online if you want, though I have to say international mail is just not working in Britain anymore. We put in notes linking to research on how vision develops, begging people, quite honestly, to have 20-degree angles on desks and to practice being able to sit and stand. And I can't tell you enough times that simply getting really good sitting and standing and sitting, where the child isn't using anything as a prop but can go straight up, straight down, has really good core strength, it's very good upright posture, is unbelievably important for sound, for vision, for motor skills.
But Charlotte, did you, sorry to interrupt, but do you remember, well, I don't know, but when I was growing up, we had inclined desk. The wooden desk were inclined. So they knew that before. And then
yes,
I guess
yes,
for economy of money, it's easier to do
yes.
a flat bench compared to an inclined desk.
And even worse, what we've seen recently in Britain is schools who are obsessed by controlling the students are insisting they use a ruler on a flat desk, and they all have to creep along. And what's happening is they're blocking their airways, they're straining their vision. And we know from Harman's research that even if only 20% of children arrive in school with visual problems, within 5 years, you'll have 80% with visual problems in that environment. It is horrendous what we're doing to children at the moment in schools. It really is. It's stuff we knew in the past. We certainly knew it in 1944, 45, when we came out of World War II. We are doing to children. It is horrible. So posture is unbelievably important. Getting both eyes working together, we've got a lot of information at the back of this manual to get you going, is really important. Both eyes have to work together to send messages to the brain. When you go to an optician, they check one eye, they check the other eye, can see 20 feet away. I am not reading this book 20 feet away. I am using both eyes to track text, and both eyes need to send messages to the brain for my brain to make sense. In the same way, when I'm sound processing, both ears have to work together. And we are not checking that. And I would desperately love opticians to really be checking binocular vision and visual processing. But it is not happening. So at the back of this manual, we've got vision exercises and we've got some tools to show you how to bring people to mastery of working with two eyes. And you have to understand that sound and vision are utterly linked. We hear to see and see to hear. And if one or the other is dysregulated, it will dysregulate the other. And particularly what we see with sound is when we check for vision, even if the person's eyes work well with numbers, we get scrambling if there's a problem with sound. We have to get the sound sorted in order to get the vision sorted. And it is magical when it happens. It is. So, but it's really important to understand the connection. And we have to get people to the point where everything integrates, and it doesn't integrate by magic. We would have in the past been out as hunter-gatherers, singing, dancing, moving, gathering berries, shooting bows and arrows, doing whatever. Those activities would have integrated our senses and our motor skills. So we've got all these tools, and we're not going to spend any time reading this sheet at all. We're going to shoot through to what we're doing. For the Chinese market, they wanted me to analyze at what ages one would use all these tools. So I faithfully ticked pretty much every box. Not sure I take too much notice of it, but the fundamental message is sound therapy is for life and pre-birth, and it will benefit you whenever. And doing cognitive activities is a good thing to do if it's age appropriate, but don't rush people to things before their two eyes are working together, before they've got bilateral integration. 7+ is really where we're aiming to get people going. Our experience, of course, everybody wants to play, therefore play. And with all of these tools, we say to people, play. So the first thing we get out are pattern block shapes. And pattern block shapes are lovely, and you will sit there and want to play with them. If you don't, there's something not quite right. So, I left these with my 85-year-old the other day and told her to make patterns. And she was delighted, because actually, if we just sat there having a cup of coffee, you would automatically start putting bits together. When I do these with teaching assistants, they love it. They take photographs of the patterns they've made. Everybody wants to play with them. Everybody wants to make towers, shapes, patterns, pictures. So it's a good thing to do. You as the instructor need to understand that these fit into a much bigger picture. These are not just toys. These are an important part of Euclidean geometry. And as we go through this with clients, we need to have in our heads where we're going. And where we're going to is A-level maths. So we need to have an understanding that the hexagon fits into a circle, and the circle just touches the edge of the hexagon, and that you can make a network of 6 external circles, 6 external hexagons. You can measure them, space, shape, whatever. Starting with the toys, we're working with touch, we're working with vision. We are building up a feel, touch, we understand them. Because remember, children don't really see rhombus shapes or something like a Union Jack, things with diagonals, really until 6, 7 years old. That being able to perceive and understand shape is something that develops really from 3 to 7, 8. So we want to play with these. We want to get to really know them, not just put them away at 5 and go, oh, that's a bit childish. So play with them, but keep in your head, we're going somewhere eventually. And so, as I say, you'll play, and playing is a good thing, because as you play, you're using fine motor skills. You are planning, I want to make a hedgehog. You've got to think how a hedgehog might look. You're using hand-to-eye coordination. You're thinking about symmetry because you want your pattern to be symmetrical. You're recognizing patterns because you're making them. You're counting because you might need 10 hexagons and 15 rhombuses to make your pattern. You're problem solving because you don't have 15 rhombuses, and it's visual spatial skills. But at quite a low level, and we're bringing together touch and vision and probably talking, so we're bringing our auditory skills in too. And those skills aren't yet properly integrated when we're working with the child, but through the play, we start integrating them. And we might start challenging each other to make ridiculous animals or flowers or whatever comes to mind. And again, it's more of the same. And we might want then to start creeping up to a little bit of maths, but we're not going to say we're doing maths. We're thinking, hang on, How many rhombuses can I get into a hexagon? How many triangles can I get into a hexagon? And so on. And we might make a table. In my experience of working with children, when I show them how to make a table, they want to take control. And if we treat it like an investigation, they can be detectives and they can put it in their book. And it becomes a game, but it becomes a game where they're building up the foundation skills for maths. But if we keep it light, we keep it fun, we're just doing it out of kind of interest. This is kind of fascinating. And we can start making patterns of shapes using different shapes. What can we see? And always it's fun. Another important game we play is Kim's game. So you get a tray, you put a few of the pieces, I start with very few, and the child, tries to remember what they've seen. You then cover it with a tea towel and you might take one of the pieces away. You uncover it, you say to the child which piece is missing. And what you're really doing is helping the child visualize shapes. They're building up visual memory. They're building up the skills to recall things. And it's fun. And because it's fun, we learn more efficiently. We might put the shapes behind their backs. And so behind their backs, without them seeing, we ask them to tell us what the shape is. And of course, again, we're touch, we're visualizing, we are thinking, what is this shape actually looking like? What color is it? How many sides has it got? And things. And children like doing that, and they like taking turns and doing it on other people. We've made you some lovely worksheets. So that you've got lots of cards where you've got patterns to copy. And we've tried to put them in some sort of order. And you can argue about the order, you can argue about the pattern all you like, it doesn't matter, discussion is good. But it's that ability to see a pattern, copy a pattern, and extend the pattern. And that is important, because being able to see and manipulate patterns is what a lot of our future education is going to be about. Because once AI takes all the basic jobs, you need these higher level skills. And you work through the cards, and you as the leader are going to keep a record. So in the manual, we have got a checklist, and you can tick off the cards the child can do easily, the cards where the child is sticking, or the adult. One of the good things to do with this is to get the child to design their own cards and design their own patterns, and then get somebody else to try and copy and finish off the pattern. Because the more agency a person has over their learning, the more they engage with it and the deeper they learn. So that's also a very important thing to do. And as you go, celebrate, take photographs, really enjoy it. It's a game, it's kind of fun, you're challenging each other. And you're asking about relationships, you're talking about them. So sound, vision, motor skills are all coming together. You're asking if they can predict how many pieces they're going to need, or could they adapt the design without running out of pieces? Anything. And keeping records is useful. Eventually, when the child is about 8 to 9, you want to move beyond pattern block shapes. And you need to move to compasses. So compasses are bizarrely problematic for international trade. We have put into the boxes, and I think you have to put into the boxes separately in different countries, a set of locking compasses. So we have locking compasses because what we want the child to be able to do is really control the compasses very well. We don't want wobbly compasses. And we want the child to be able to rotate between forefinger, thumb, so that they have got complete control. And when they're using the compasses, they are absolutely still. There's no movement of the body. They're not having to change eyes. They can control their fine motor skills so well, their focus so well, that they can control the compasses to make really beautiful circles. They can control the compasses to make really beautiful patterns. And what they'll see is they can make the patterns and the shapes of the pattern block shapes. So we want really good control. And this really is bringing hand, eye, brain together at a higher level. Because once you can start making patterns with compasses, you really are controlling things at a higher level. And we're not checking that we're getting that mastery, and we're going on building that sort of mastery really well into the teens. So building pattern block shapes is super important. Being able to control the compasses and realizing that there are the 6 points and you can make a regular hexagon, that you can join points and it looks like a cuboid, and you can make the pattern.
It's very creative to use the compasses.
Very, very creative.
Yeah.
We used them as children what was that game? Spirograph. We had to control compasses, but we also had to control tools in order to draw accurate technical drawing. It was absolutely vital pre-CAD CAM. But if you can control a tool and make patterns in your brain, you are thinking at a much higher level. You're having to bring everything together. And we are not designing education systems to make sure children really are developing well to use tools at a higher level. And compasses are a very easy way of getting there. So very, very exciting. But what you're actually doing is laying the foundations for A-level maths. And all the time you're doing it, you are measuring, having a look, see if there's a relationship between the size of this hexagon, the size of that one, just like the detectives. And what you'll find is that eventually the child can visualize the patterns and shapes. They understand how they fit together mathematically in the same way as the ancient Greeks and the ancient Egyptians did. And you think about your own education. I don't know what yours was like, but mine was, learn it, learn it, learn it. It's a tangent. It's
a
sine, cosine. I did not really see them as part of this pattern at all.
No.
I had no idea.
Yeah, we were brought up.
That's right.
We were brought up using the compass. I don't know if today they use compasses in classes.
They don't use them at all, really. And so we need to go back to using compasses, and we need to link these patterns all the way through explicitly to the wider pattern, to labeling and saying, actually, we're seeing a tangent there. The line is just touching the circle, but it's not crossing. That is a tangent. And if you draw a line from the tangent to the center of the circle, it will always be 90 degrees. Well, I can assure you, I didn't know that till I was 30. And, it is just not taught that this is a pattern and it has a very regular, predictable way of operating. And that's the exciting thing. Sitting there churning out some after some after some that you don't understand in context isn't very boring. Whereas once you understand the pattern, then you can visualize it, you can manipulate it. When you get to higher level skills and you don't want to get your pattern block shapes out, you want to visualize. You want to be really skilled at it. And that is cognitively very different than learning by rote. If somebody's relying on rote learning and goes on to higher levels, they're coping, they have to rely on coping strategies, they work very long hours, they are anxious. And I know working with senior professionals, that is a very common pattern of behavior. We've put people through, we haven't really got them to the state they really understand things. And then midlife, when they've got the mortgage, they've got the family, they've got the wife, then they have their lifetime crisis. We don't really want that. We want people to go into life very confident, very grounded. So
yeah, that's definitely what we want when we are in that field of work.
Well, it seems like nothing, but actually, if you're getting all these spatial relationships sorted, it affects your driving, it affects your map reading, it affects your ability to visualize any problem in any work situation. So it might not even just be mathematical that you're working. You've got to visualize how the new building's going to work. You've got to visualize how you're going to operate in a different space. It's all much of the same thing. We bore people to death about the importance of working across the midline. And probably the most important thing we designed is a game called Midline Mastery. For those of you who know it, it's obviously a complete rip-off of Qubits, but Qubits was driving us mad because the cards were random and the cubes were often in brightly colored shapes and clients wanted black and white. And
why black and white?
well, if you've got somebody who's moving on from learning difficulties and you produce a red cube with black and white cards,
Okay.
they really it's just an extra element of confusion.
Yeah.
They want to learn the basic skills quite simply and then move on. And we also linked them to the work of the Tansley test, which identifies that horizontal and vertical lines are much, much easier to see than diagonals. So for the first 19 cards, you're seriously on horizontal, vertical. You can work with them different angles, but basically it's very horizontal and vertical. The game has 16 cubes and you're going to make and copy patterns on cards. So we made lots of cards and what we suggest to people is before you start, play with the cubes. Because our experience tells us when we're on a diagonal cube, often clients sort through all the cubes looking for the right diagonal. They need to get to the point where they understand that all the cubes are identical. And so playing with them and getting to, make patterns and shapes themselves, even if they go and put the whole tray to all white dots or the whole tray to all black dots, just building that understanding that they're all identical is actually quite important foundation. And that from those identical cubes, they've got to make the patterns.
Yeah.
And the way we require people to play this exciting game is quite pedantic. So we're asking people to sit at a table at the point X, so they're absolutely at their midline. We are asking them to put the tray right in front of them. They're going to copy the pattern on the card, but they are going to go over their midline to pick up each piece, alternating hands. So you're sitting upright, you're going over your midline, and you're going to work row by row by row. There are no coping strategies with this game. We are evil. But by sitting upright, by going across your midline, you are forcing hand, eye, brain to work across the midline.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That makes sense. That makes so much sense.
One of my provisos, though, is if somebody is still left ear dominant, that can be a problem. So you need to make sure their ability to follow sound is also well in place, because that can disrupt it. But assuming we've got everything where we want to go. And
can you just go back to a question? There is a question from Emma. Charlotte, can you please explain how you use the recording table previously scrolled? The one that you were just to go further up. Bring back the table that you had before you started to explain the cubes. Yeah, I guess
this thing.
Table, yeah.
So basically what we've got is loads of worksheets to work with the pattern block shapes, so that as you work through the pattern block shapes, you are ticking off that your client has cleared through. Let me see what I wrote at the top of this exciting one. That you've checked, they can copy it, and there's a date that they've checked it and add more. There's no coping strategies. You're really happy that they can copy that pattern. And, it's not a fluke. Often what we do is, we get somebody to copy a pattern. We might come back to the same card the next day and see if they do it much more confidently. When they're doing it confidently, we count that. rather than if they're using lots of coping strategies. And what you see is the eye to brain gets more and more skilled as pathways open between the eyes and the brain. And things you couldn't see yesterday, you can see today. And that's the joy of this. So don't overdo 10,000 cards. The best thing to do is a few cards, put them away and go to sleep. When you wake up, your brain is much more functional. And it's quite astonishing how much you end up seeing. And if we talk about this copying, you see, I put chopsticks to push the dice away, to stop my client bringing them in, and to force my client to go right over their midline. And it's just cheap. You can use any markers, rulers, anything you like, but to make sure the client is definitely going over their midline and they're not creeping in. I don't let the client pick up the cube and start working it all out, fiddling it, and then do it in the middle. They've got to have it right and sorted on the other side of the midline before they bring it to the tray.
Oh, so that's a good tip. Yeah.
It's a very important tip, because if I've got somebody who's reasonably clever, but they're swapping from eye to eye, unless I get them doing that, they will go very quickly, always using coping strategies. So we never integrate left and right. That's why being pedantic is actually much more important than you realize.
Yeah.
But it really yields benefits. Some of the clients cannot see the card, so you're probably going to have to cover it up. But you definitely want them to do row by row, because they're going to read row by row by row. And you are going to get them to the point where they can break down and see the pattern. And so going row by row, covering up, helps them. But eventually you'll go back to that card and they will need to do it without any coping strategies. And you don't count it as done until they don't use coping strategies. But as I said, today you might need the card covered. Tomorrow you can't even imagine why you needed the card covered yesterday.
So what
It's
kind of
quite
coping strategy would the children use, or even the adults?
well, the children will use touch and this business of covering up the cards. So instead of you seeing a whole card, you're breaking it down so they can see just 4 blocks at a time, and they can make much better sense of it.
Yeah.
And then you're moving it down slowly so they can see what the next 4 look like. What we want them to be able to do is they see the card, and in their mind's eye, they can break that down to 16 cubes. So they can see the individual items and they can see it as part of a whole picture.
Is there any
And
other coping strategies from the child to try to do the pattern, but not necessarily? You'll push for them to cross the midline on one side
so
and the other. What else
yeah,
would they use as a coping strategy, just to, because they
they
cannot
want
do
to go,
the right?
they want to go around the edge. So they
Okay.
often want to do one side and then the other side. So they're not bringing together left and right.
Mm-hmm.
So going around the edge is a coping strategy, anything, but dictating they've got to go line by line. They have to work across their midline. And they can't use ways to creep around to work out what the shape looks like.
And so
They've
they
got
cannot start. They cannot start from, for instance, if they have the whole card, they cannot start to put one cube on the top right and one cube on the top left. They
they've got
have to follow the row. Okay. And
and
so how do you indicate that to the child? Do you explain that to the child? Do you show them, or do you?
both. I will show them me doing the pattern. I will
Yeah.
show them what needs to be done. I will then watch the child doing it, and I will be stopping them constantly as they're fiddling and bringing it to the middle. And I'll be going, no, you've got to do it on that side. And I often ask them to tap the table, then bring it over. So when they've got it right, they're tapping the table, then they move it and put it on the tray. Anything to slow them down, because they've learnt to rush to cover up gaps in their cognition.
Yeah.
And if they start working in the wrong way, I put the cubes back and tell them, no, you've got to go row by row. Doesn't count if you don't go row by row.
Do they get frustrated when they don't do it right after 2 or 3 times?
No, because you break it down by covering up the card. What I do is I count the ones they've got right. And usually if they are getting things wrong, it's that there might be a patch where they're having difficulty seeing. And I tell them we've got to get the eyes working better.
Okay.
So they might habitually have a problem with the bottom right or something. That's telling us we've got a problem with vision and we've got to get the eyes working better. But generally, we've graded them so they're pretty simple to begin with. So we're going to start with shapes we're pretty confident are quite easy to process and that we're building the basic skills. That's why we wanted to design our own cards and to number them so that we're taking them through all the basic skills of horizontal, vertical, and then it's not really till card 19 we get to diagonal. Our experience with children is they like insanely difficult patterns. So we even put in some insanely difficult horizontal, vertical patterns because they like to do insanely difficult. And then we go back to something simpler again with the verticals.
Okay. Yeah.
With the diagonals. So, and the thing that because remember what we're building up to is they can see the pattern, copy the pattern, and then they're going to copy it from memory. And that is quite a challenge for most of them because they've never copied things from memory before, and we're building up visual recall.
So all those tasks, those exercises, do they come with a proper script, or the therapist or the assessor will do their own script, like in like the whisk,
you
like
can,
some of the
you get your own script. You're going to have to work out some sort of dialogue because different clients operate differently.
Okay.
And this is not a standardized activity.
Yeah.
It is an activity you're doing to build skills. And some of my clients take seconds, they get it, particularly with the early cards, and they are thrilled when they can recall the card perfectly and work across their midline. And they get very excited and want to go forward. Others, it takes a bit more time to build up those skills. But once they get their first card, recalling it from memory, my goodness, are they excited?
Yeah.
And it is, and I say to them, it's a hard skill. And when I get to the end and they've copied the pattern, we count the ones they've done right. And of course, with 16 dice, usually we're getting at least 12 out of 16. There'll just be a few that have gone awry. But then I might say to them, well, okay, you can't see it. Stand up and have a look. Can you see the one that's not right? And changing focus, sometimes they see the one that's not right, they correct it. We then start again and do it again. And this time they get it right. And you're going, brilliant.
Yeah.
And, I point out to them the average human can remember 8 things. Remembering 16 is a bit of a big ask. So, I big up their attainment because we want to get them to higher level skills. And because it appears to be a game, they're usually pretty happy to do it. And it's more the discipline of the game, getting someone sitting opposite them and playing it. The other business is I find that getting them to watch somebody else takes the pressure off them. They're checking the other person's going across their midline, not cheating, is doing everything else, but they can often see the pattern faster watching somebody else and are gagging to do it themselves than they can when they're in the hot seat.
So it's good for us too.
Yes, it's good for all of us. It's good for everybody. So getting students to work together is a good thing to do. And so it's in schools, having 2 students working together is a reasonable use of both students' time. and one does one checks and swap round. Neither student's wasting their time, both are developing cognitive skills, and they themselves admit they know they see the pattern better when they're in charge. And that makes us then start saying to them, well, how else can we get you to a point where you are empowered? So they could design their own cards. They could do anything that makes them, they can come back the next year and teach the year below, whatever, gets them to this very much higher skill level. And it's really forcing hand-eye brain. Yeah.
And there is another question here. Do you find dyslexic learners with poor working memory struggle to recall the pattern? With the
So if I have got a dyslexic learner, the first thing I'm going to do is sort out their primitive reflexes so their head is separate from their body. I get their eyes to cross the midline so their eyes are not jumping as a result of retained primitive reflexes. I sort out their sound processing and make sure that they can follow sound when it moves, and usually that they're right ear dominant. When we get to this and we sort this out, the dyslexia disappears.
beautiful.
Because what we've got is we've got all the foundation skills sorted, we've got the midline crossing, we've got the going across, and we've stopped the reversals because we've addressed the cranial nerves that haven't got into the right place because of retained primitive reflexes. We've addressed problems with the sound processing and disrupting eye movements. Everything's gone. We have now trained the eyes to work across the midline coherently. And so for me, that is the end of dyslexia. And my clients go on to write plays on the West End and whatever and have glowing careers.
Beautiful.
Yes. So it's getting to the point where everything's happening properly in the brain.
Yeah.
But it takes time. But human development takes time. So again, we've got a checklist. You can go through all the cards. If you are a teacher, you might decide you're going to check every 10th or 5th card or something yourself. If you can get students working in pairs, they're getting the practice in, but you definitely need to check a certain number of the cards, and that horizontal, vertical's working, that when we get on to things with diagonals and more complex shapes, they can do them.
And it's not happening within weeks. It's a process which can take months.
Yeah.
Or years.
Yes. I don't think years so much, because if you're taking years, then you haven't sorted out the primitive reflexes, the sound and the vision. Yeah. But generally, I expect to be through these in about 3 months with somebody who's in a good place at 8+.
Yeah.
And it's not a race. So we could do 10 cards now, we could come back to them. And to be honest, giving time for the brain to consolidate is not a bad thing. So you can build it into a primary school curriculum over 12 months. So the teacher's got the time to check each child.
Yeah.
And so as you work through, you want to be sure they can see the pattern, copy the pattern, do it from memory, always going across the midline. And what it's going to do is give you a much bigger memory. You're going to be able to visualize far better. Your sense of left and right and things are going to be better. And just as you're feeling things are good, we move on, and you're going to see the card and you're going to do it upside down. And that takes a bit of formal thought to begin with, so that I take just a plain piece of card, label top, bottom, left, right on both top and bottom, rotate it so the person understands intellectually that the right has now shifted to the left, the top has gone to the bottom. So if I'm going to be looking at a card, I've got to be thinking, okay, if I'm going to be working in rows from top to bottom, this corner is now up there. But I'm not turning the cards. I've got to visualize the card and rotate it in my mind's eye. And when you start doing that, it can be quite mechanical, and you may need to go back to some coping strategies. But
Mhm.
and you're going to talk about it. So your sound, your vision, your motor skills are all working together to solve this problem. A couple of weeks later, you come to a card, you see the person doing it, and they have no difficulty rotating the card and doing it upside down without having to go through top goes to bottom, bottom goes to top, left goes to right. They can do it.
Do you
Once,
encourage the child? Sorry, do you encourage the child to talk, to to
yes,
to to to,
yeah,
to express what they are doing, what they are thinking, and what they are doing?
to begin with, yes. They don't need it long term, but to begin with, yes. It's what you're asking someone to do is very hard.
Yeah.
Rotating things in their mind's eye is a, the top end of visual processing.
Mm.
So to begin with, I have the cards. I print something out. We chop them up. We turn them round. We think about it. We do it on the card. They kind of have to get in their heads, and to begin with, they're just going, "Oh my goodness!" And then I say, "Well, it doesn't matter. Go and sleep. Next time
And it's a
we
game.
start. Yeah, it's a game."
Yeah.
But my goodness, they love it because they feel like the top spy. You point out how useful it is if you can rotate things in your mind's eye, then you can be reading things upside down on, the head teacher's table, whatever you're up to. And when they start thinking, oh, yes, I could be doing, exciting things, they get interested. And so you're going through, you're explaining why pieces are in the places they are, and you work through upside down, line by line. And when you've got to that stage, you then move on to mirror image. And again, away you go. And in mirror image, understand intellectually what's happening, have a go at doing it with the cubes, talking out loud about what's happening, making sure everyone's got their heads around it. And sure enough, a few weeks later, there we are. We can manipulate things in mirror image. It'll be much faster the mirror image than the upside down
Okay.
because they've already rotated things in their mind's eye. Once you've done that, I personally would get them I get them creating their own challenges with the cubes, but I would go to times tables. I would get a 10 by 10 grid. I'd get them to work out the pattern of all the times tables. And generally it takes me 20 minutes to teach someone times tables. I
And
don't need to do
how do you do that?
because once they can memorize cube patterns, they can memorize and see the pattern in times tables. And once, 10 is very easy. It's just a band down one side of the thing. 2 is very easy because it's just bands all the way down and so on. The more complicated patterns, they can now visualize, and you color in patterns on the 10 by 10 grid. You look at the numbers and see if there's patterns in the numbers. But basically, you're getting to the stage where the person understands the pattern of the times tables such that if they see a row of numbers, they will know and be able to visualize how they work together and whether they are part of the times table really anywhere in the whole number system. They're not having to go, oh, 8, 8, no, 9, 9 nines are, and they're trying to think what they've memorized because that's just rote learning. What they're able to do is visualize the actual pattern of the tables. And
So
that
they
is
will know
it's
better, and they don't need a calculator to do that.
they don't need a calculator, and a calculator won't help them see number pattern and understand relationships.
Yeah.
And really in coding and in higher level maths and in social sciences, when we're looking at statistics, pattern is everything. And we are getting more and more data and more patterns. We've not only got to understand those patterns, we've got to understand when they're rubbish. And if
Yeah.
we don't understand things in context, we cannot make sense of it. And we are very easily gaslighted or fooled by data. So those skills to see things in context, understand the pattern, are incredibly important for the future. Otherwise, we are a slave to AI. So
Yes.
understanding pattern is important, but understanding times tables as number patterns rather than as something you rote learn to please the government is vital. It's a massive shift in how people actually learn. And there are lots of number pattern games you can find online and number pattern problems. Lots of maths books you can buy with number pattern problems. You can go out. Yep. You can
Kay
go
is
out.
asking, sorry, Kay is asking, do you mean the mind's eye as used by Ron Davis in his literacy work from The Gift of Dyslexia?
I have no idea what Ron Davis wrote. I know that I visualize patterns and I can visualize huge, so that if I'm reading, I'm visualizing what it is I'm reading.
Yeah, I think, and that's, I think that's the same. Yeah, same definitions, sort of. Yeah.
Yes. So, and things like maps, to be able to read a map and visualize what it is you're seeing in the world around you, to be able to hold the visual recall of the map. So, I read a map and then I drive to where I want to go. I don't need sat nav nagging me every 2 minutes. Playing visual recall games, and you can get insanely difficult visual recall games by the time you've got to this level. But Kim's game is always a good thing. Doing things like hiding objects. So you might hide a ball somewhere. The person might describe to people the location, and they've then got to follow the description to find the hidden object. So you're really having to visualize the trail all the way back to the hidden object. That really brings in sound, vision, motor skills. And memory cards. We've put in the box some memory cards, and you can see how many memory cards you can memorize. Hundreds of them. And again, that's very useful. You're just building up really good visual recall so that you're confident in your recall. It's not falling away and leaving you feeling very insecure in life.
And
And of
those games,
course,
like memory games, usually we start to play with the children from the age of 3 or 4.
yeah, but you're not ready really.
They're
What
not
this
ready. Okay.
no. So I think 3 or 4 is just playing for fun. Playing seriously, you've got to have stereo vision, and that's not in place till 7, and you've got to be able to hold a visual picture of them. And that being able to hold the visual picture is really important. There are also games online where you have digit recall, and you've got to recall the digits in order forward or backwards. Again, being able to build really good visual recall enables you to pick up information and process it much faster. It just gives you more options in life rather
Yeah.
than thinking, oh, I can't do this. But you definitely need to have your sound and your vision working properly in order to get there. And lots of people haven't. And so it makes them very anxious in life because they don't know where they are, they can't read a map, they can't recall where they've been.
Yeah.
So, like everything, we have a checklist, and simply we know they can copy the pattern, we know they can do it from memory, they can do it upside down, they can do it in mirror image. And that might be 12 months work, might be 2 years. You're not in a race. And particularly if you're in a primary school, building skills from 8 to 11, that's a really good time to build these skills. If you're in a secondary school, you definitely want to have them in place by the time the child is 14 and starting serious exams. And to be honest, I think it's worth getting most of these skills in place pre-puberty, because puberty just messes with people. And just keeping everything going throughout the worst of the growth spurts is, doing well. So
Yeah, there is
that's
a question here. Sorry. Can anyone buy the toolbox and use it straight away without further training?
yes, you can, but you need to be aware that the foundations of sound, vision, motor skills need to be in place in order to get it to work to its maximum. But yes, anyone can use it.
So you need to have someone who so you can refer to a tomatis consultant. You can refer also to a behavioral optometrist.
Yeah.
And someone who is going to work on the retained primitive reflexes.
Because if you don't have those basics in place,
Yeah.
the person will block, and you'll see they can't do certain things. They're always swapping eyes. So it's quite useful to see what coping strategies they're using. But basically, we want to get everyone to the point their development is fantastic, and that we're not getting this drop away where they can't access things and they just can't see things.
Yeah.
So it's very systematic building up of skills. The next game we came up with was a thing called Shapeshifters, and we had been buying a game from the States, I think, which was a thing called Shapeometry, but that became pretty much unavailable in Britain during Brexit and after COVID. And we found, in fact, that we could copy exactly the same thing using a Russian block set. And these shapes you can buy very cheaply. And so we designed cards to go with them. And like all games, we say to people, go and play. And as you can see, I've had my friends playing. This tower was made by scientists in the United Nations. And anybody of any age, any qualification, trust me, they want to build things with stupid little shapes. They are really attractive for everybody to play. And playing with the shapes and thinking about shape equivalents so that you soon realize when you're working with them that the little white shape, so little white shape, little black shape is twice as long as the little white. So it takes two of the little white to make one of the black in length. And that, I think it's a purple shape that's about 3 units long. So you've got, it's an odd shape so that the white shape will fit over. So you could start drawing lines across. You can count the white as a 2, the purple L shape as a 3. Most of the other pieces are 4, and there's a sort of U shape, orange one, which you could count as 5. And understanding space equivalence is important. And just let children explore it, play with other things. Obviously, when I was photographing this, I had some little cubes that fitted over perfectly. But you can group the shapes into 2, 3, 4, 5 unit pieces. And that's important. We're starting to think about the foundations of equations. What equals what? And again, as usual, you build up visualizing the shapes. You can play games by putting them in a bag, and by touch, they have to work out what the shape is. Or behind their backs, we give you a load of cards, and on the cards are problems, and we say to you, can you make the same shape with the shapes on the top half of the card as on the bottom? So let me find a more complicated one. So there's lots of cards, and so on the one on the example on the screen, you've got a blue L shape and a green square. So they are about 4 units. Well, they are exactly 4 units each. So you know 4 plus 4 is going to equal 8. Then on the bottom, you've got the U-shaped one, or N-shaped, which is 5 units. And you've got the L-shaped one, which is 3. So you know the top and the bottom equal. So before we even start, you've checked I haven't made a mistake and given you a card that's impossible. Most of the games we copied, to be honest, they all had cards which were impossible. These have been checked by Mandel. they aren't impossible, but checking is a good thing to do, because when you play other games, you'll discover there are errors. And also what you're doing is you're building up a sense of equations, that 2 blues and a green can equal 1 orange and a purple L shape. And then you can have a look at those shapes and you can think, can I make those into the same shape? Can I fit them together somehow so they make the same shape? We did provide answers, but my honest advice as an ex-maths teacher is I'd hide the answers from any child, because children want to please so much that they'll copy the answer.
Yeah.
If the child is struggling, let them do things like putting shapes on top of each other, trying to work out really by touch, fiddling around, trying to work out how these shapes would make the same shape.
So here we are going to favor the coping strategies.
To begin with.
Yeah.
But that doesn't count. Next day, you get up, you see the card, and you say, okay, can you, without lots of fiddling, just move them to the same shape? And the card we could not see yesterday for the life of us, we now see. And sometimes it might take a day or two, but trust me, they do. And often when I get clients, we eventually fiddle it together with coping strategies. I then scramble the pieces again and ask them to do it straight away. And often they don't have a problem. They go, I just can't think I couldn't see that. And you're just building up connections from eye to brain. And slowly but
yeah. So how do you address the time factor? How long do you stay on a task usually?
a few minutes. I don't sit somebody, like they're not sitting there till they get it. If they block, I will
Move to
either
something
show,
else.
yeah, or move on to something else,
Yeah.
but always keep it playful. These are games. It doesn't matter if we see it tomorrow or next week. It's not a race. We are building connections from eye to brain. And, we all have ups and downs. We might not have eaten. We might be worried about our sore knee. 101 other ridiculous things enter someone's life. Today may not be the day. But don't worry, we'll have another go tomorrow. We'll just see. And slowly but surely it comes. It's the two eyes are working together, it will come. And we keep a record of where we're at. And these records with the cards are important because we have gone through, as hard as we can, making the cards go through from easy to hard. My experience is that children like doing insanely difficult cards, and they do like getting to the point where they've mastered it, and they like that sense of progression. The danger is if you've got somebody who's horribly competitive, keeping them away from somebody who needs time. And so I'd move my people who need time away from anyone that's very competitive. I want people to have time and space to think. This is not a race, it is simply child development. And honestly, all humans have times when they just can't see that thing. That's not their, it's going to take them longer. But there might be another skill they're brilliant at.
Okay.
Doesn't matter. We're all on the same motorway. Some of us stop at different service stations. It'll be okay.
And Kay is also asking about, she meant the time from the point of view of present, past, and future, today, tomorrow, and last week. Is that something that comes into place with those games?
Your sense of time.
Yeah. Like to
I would,
remember what I did yesterday, what I'm doing today, what I will do tomorrow.
I think of time being much more connected to sound therapy, to be honest.
Okay.
And that my autistic clients who really have no sense of time, when we've done sound therapy, their sense of timing and their time management comes in. And I have a lot of clients whose timekeeping is diabolical when we start, and it's super by the time we've got through sound. Sound is incredibly linked to time management. And that's the big shift. This will really just help you with visual recall and with being able to manipulate things and your brain to be able to see things using your visual system.
Yeah, which means that we have to work on the vestibular system to work on the time.
Yes.
Yeah, which is very much what we do with somatics and sound therapy. Yeah.
Yes. I mean, it is really noticeable
Yeah.
when somebody who's got dreadful timekeeping has done a couple of rounds of sound and suddenly I don't have to set aside half the day for their possible arrival. We have got juggling balls in the pack. 3. Juggling balls are incredibly important because they are telling you very easily, very quickly, without anything that looks academic, that a person can go across their midline and work reasonably well without moving their head and their body. If there's a lot of head and body movement, then we know they haven't got their midline crossing in place. And we've had a lot of clients who have really got very much better motor sensory integration because they're very happy to juggle, but they have no interest in anything that looks like school. And they will spend ages working on their juggling because it's high status.
And it's
So
fun.
it is fun. And actually, what I'm getting back from my adult autistics, which I've got quite a tribe at the moment, is they say actually it calms them down. They feel their brain works differently, and they're feeling the traffic across the corpus callosum, and it makes them very happy.
I think
So,
it will also work well with the ADHD children or adults as well.
well, if you like juggling, but it is high status, and therefore children will practice it for much longer, and they're delighted when it works. But it's a lot harder than you realize if somebody hasn't had any bilateral integration of motor skills. Because you've not just got to get your motor skills working, your eyes eventually also have to work across your midline. And of course, we're back to timing and sequencing once you get 2 balls, and that's where our sound therapy comes in.
You know, we
So
used
with
to do that when we used to play. Well, I remember growing up at school. In school, we used to play with juggling balls and 2 and 3 and 4 balls and da 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 da. I don't see children playing that in the playground anymore because they are all on the screen.
That's right, we've got to go back to all the activities we played in the playground.
Yeah,
So back to the 1950s and 60s. So
absolutely. So we were from the good generation then.
we were very, very blessed. And in Britain, you can see that the retiring generation have actually got higher level skills than the generation coming into the workplace. It's really a crisis for skills development. So you're trying to get the person to throw a ball across their midline. And for many people, that is not easy. And they don't even realize they've got a midline. So one of the things I do that's very useful with the book is I stick the book at their midline to give them a sense that they've got to go across a specific point. And so they've got an idea that there's something to go over and that the ball is going in an arc from one hand to another. And when we're starting, often one hand and the other don't communicate at all. So I might get them to put their hands out and I'm tapping the ball and holding their head and making their eyes follow the ball back and forth across the midline, going from hand to hand a few times. I find that significantly changes their ability to throw a ball across. And I also say to them, look, we've got 2 points. The first is let's just get it over the midline. Don't catch, just let's get it over. That is fantastic. Catching is your second point. And so if you feel you're winning something, you're more likely to keep practicing. And that makes people much happier. So there you go, me telling you tap, 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 tap. And when we were in Italy, we were getting some very good results with some of the autistic and cerebral palsy children, just showing them how to do that. And a few people did cry when they saw nearly instant change in the children. That
Yeah.
once they understood how that it was possible to do this, no, we could get the throw across. And they could then start moving on to catching it and throwing it back and so on. And just stay there. throwing and catching until the person who really is very confident. But what you're doing is you're getting the sequencing, you're getting the going across the midline, you're getting the motor skills and the vision going across the midline, you're getting some rhythm, and that, of course, is your sound. We're integrating a lot of senses and motor skills, and it's important. So once they are on one ball and then things are going really well, then move on to two balls. And in my experience, very common that the second ball just shoots forward. They cannot get the second ball to go over. And all you're asking to do is throw one. When one gets to the top, they then throw the other one. So there's a timing difference, so it's sound. If our sound isn't in a good place, this can be very difficult. And we've got to cross the midline. So if we've got problems with our midline crossing, that can be a problem. So when I start, I say to them, don't catch, just throw one ball, then the other. First one, then the other. And I often get them to say, first one, then the other, because they can't manage the timing. And I show them just throwing one, then the other. And watch, because they very quickly want to just throw both at the same time. And that's no good. They've got to get the timing.
Would you use the metronome to do that?
Not to begin with.
No, but once for them to be able to understand the rhythm.
When we start, they've got, when one gets to the top, so if anything, they're using vision, then the second one. Once they've got the motor skills and the sequencing and they can catch them, then I might start using a metronome. But to begin with, there's so much, it honestly, it overloads the brain. And they are simply, literally going first one, then the other. If they can do it with a timing difference, we then are going to catch the second ball. And then we're going to get to the point where we can catch the first ball. And you want them to keep practicing that until they can start throwing with either hand and catch both balls. So it doesn't matter which side they start on, they can throw and catch both balls. And, once they're at that stage, they can move on to three balls, and occasionally you get the shooting forward again, but that tends to be rare at three balls. And the problem more at three is the sequencing, because you're throwing first one, then the other, then the other, then the other, and you have to be catching and throwing all the time. I often send students out to corridors where they're away from an audience so they can get their heads around it. And again, when we start, I often say to them, just throw one, then the other, and don't catch anything. And slowly get that sequencing in their heads, get to the point where they can manage it. And it is very exciting. It's one of the things I get texted most about is people going, oh, I did it 20 times.
Yes. So Kay is saying, I had a child who would catch but then would not throw back, rather throw ball behind on the right hand backwards. That's very complicated.
Well, they're just avoiding doing what you ask them to do. So they can do whatever they want to do, but for this task, we need to get nice sequencing. We want to get it in front because we're interested in peripheral vision. We're interested in the vision crossing the midline. We're interested in the vision working with the motor skills, working with sequencing and so on. So if they've got all these circus tricks, they're often ways of avoiding midline crossing.
So you have to go back to the basics of that.
Yeah, and I often do go back to throwing one ball, getting that arcing, then we move up to two, get that working, then we can start trying three. Or if we get persistent shoot forward, I go back to the primitive reflexes. And I know that when I was doing it myself, I would just simply go down lion angels in the snow and go across my midline with arm and leg. I would really think about what was happening with my midline crossing. I'd then get up and my juggling would be better.
Yeah.
So you're trying to work out what's blocking in the person. What is it that is stopping this person being able to go up the next level?
Would you go back to the cubes with
Yes.
crossing the midline?
So you're doing all these things at kind of the same time, so
Okay.
that the cubes and some of the eye exercises and the juggling all reinforce each other.
Okay.
And it's such an important thing to get integrated because we need to get traffic across the corpus callosum. We know from research that children with and adults with learning difficulties have less asymmetry in the brain and they have much less traffic across the corpus callosum. Therefore, get everything working and synchronized, and lo and behold, the person's learning difficulties get minimized. So,
And as you said before, it opens so many opportunities and so many possibilities later on to have that
yes,
flexibility as well.
yes, it's I don't care, I didn't care if my son ended up a binman or a university professor. I just wanted him to be happy and have choices. If you haven't got choices, it's miserable.
Yeah.
So that empowering people so they can do what they want to do and they can think flexibly. And if something goes wrong in life, they can get up tomorrow and reinvent themselves. When you have a mouth the size of mine, you have to do this a few times. So metronome, as I've said, really important. And it's simple. The one we've got is very simple. You can just clip it onto a person so they can't escape the sound. We put ours on at 54 beats a minute. I think you have to set it yourself the first time. It's not a fast beat. And what we're getting you to do is keeping that going in the background and getting a child to be able to clap to 54 beats a minute. Rhythm is a foundation skill. We know from research, let me turn it off before it drives you all mad. We know from research that the salience networks in the brain, breathing and everything work better if somebody's rhythm is working. So that rhythm and breathing and the networks in the brain all work together better if we've got rhythm. And so just being able to stand up and clap in nice big circles is a good thing to do. And the better you can hold a beat, the better your foundation skills are, the better the networks all work together. So you're both learning to hold beat, which is a useful skill in itself, but you're also affecting how well your brain can function.
And can you
And
talk a bit more about the breathing, the importance of the breathing there?
so if you are not rhythmic and your breathing isn't good, your bad breathing is going to affect rhythm. And poor rhythmic skills can affect breathing. And there is research showing that if a person is breathing nice, steady, rhythmic manner, then their brain works considerably better. And if you think about it, well, that just makes sense, doesn't it? Whereas if you've got somebody who's dysregulated, then and everything is a bit out of kilter, things are going to be pretty chaotic in the brain.
Yeah.
Humans are designed really to be part of a very calm, cohesive group. Our body rhythms will synchronize. So if you're a calm, coherent teacher or parent, the students around you will synchronize with your rhythms. You are more likely to be able to get everyone's breathing and everything going very beautifully and rhythmically if you have got a good sense of rhythm.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you have to think of humans as being like meerkats. We're not individuals, we're part of a group. We feel much safer in a very coherent, rhythmic group. And then everybody can feel safe and then we can get people to do what we want them to do. They've done studies of mothers and children, and you can see the children think at a much better level when they are synchronized with the mother. And that's affecting your heart rate, your breathing, but your cognition as well. When the mother is dysregulated, it impacts on the child's thinking.
Yeah. We say that
So,
all the time. Yeah.
so rhythm is unbelievably important. And of course, we see it culturally, and every culture has got nursery rhymes of some sort. English is particularly blessed, and we want you to be clapping away, hand clapping, whatever, going through lots of nursery rhymes. And they go very nicely with hand clapping, as our generation knew. So you can have the metronome bleeping away at 54 beats a minute. You can be clapping away, reciting nursery rhymes. And you're building up language, you're building up listening, you're building up understanding of language, because language is rhythmic.
Mm.
So all very good foundation skills for ultimately reading and writing, but these have to be in place or there'll be jarring moments when you block in reading and writing terms. And of course, children absolutely adore hand clapping together. So we had
Especially
a
the
very good,
girls.
yes. But to be honest, with primary school children, even the boys like it. And if it's a rhyme that appeals to them, they will recite it. So we got the whole of a year one class, well, we got half the year one class to learn each peach, pear, plum, I spy, Tom, thumb. The whole book they could recite. And each week we added an extra line, and they were very proud of their achievements. And we were going to do a scientific study, bringing Group B in the January to take them through the same curriculum. Blow me, Group A had trained them very well, and on day one they knew everything. Because in the playground, Group A had taught the whole school how to recite each peach, pear, plum. So our advice now to schools is teach every class a different book.
Yeah.
You get massive increase in the children's vocabulary. They do most of the teaching, and they are very proud of being able to recite long rhymes. And it seems to be absolutely fundamental to a certain stage of children's development. If they are having problems, that is screaming at you, there is a problem with sound processing. So even if,
For sure. Yeah, for sure.
yes,
Yeah.
so even if they are too young to scream for sound, you want to get them on some sound therapy and build up those skills until they are as good as everybody else at keeping the beat and reciting the rhymes. So these are both really great ways of screening children and also great ways of building vocabulary.
Yeah.
And of course, once you're reciting, you can start bringing the forebrain in anyway. So I
True.
was with so I was with a client yesterday who was just joyous using a forebrain. Was just enjoying it so much reciting. With older children, I use rhymes which are more fitting to their age group and that they can translate into academic work. So in secondary schools, I tend to use things like Charge of the Light Brigade because they can use that for history, they can quote it in English, they can use it if they're doing politics. There are all sorts of times when they can take gobbets from it and use it. And it's rhythmic. So it's half a league, half a league, half a league, onward, all in the valley of death rode the 600. And, forward the light brigade, was there a man dismayed? So you can use it to just take a couple of lines and embellish an essay. The way marking schemes work, they get a lot more points for making cultural references. So suddenly their language is operating at a much higher level. There's but to, there's not to reason why, there's but to do or die. And you could relate it to everything from Gaza to Ukraine to, I don't know, whatever. Very useful for secondary education. We put in more language games, and again, forebrain is always there. And you can do things like word association, clap, clap, apple, banana. You say whatever's the first word that comes in your head, but you're doing rhythmic clapping or something, clicking your fingers, all building up language skills. You can exercise to the metronome. So things like jumping jacks, things like hopscotch, things like marching, jumping, hopping, throwing a ball from hand to hand, eye exercises, stacking cups, you name it, you can do it to a metronome. You could leave the metronome running in the background and people will still internalize the beat. So if you've got...
There is attunement. It's entrainment and attunement at the same time. Yeah.
That's right. Yeah. And it, particularly with this generation who've been playing computer games where the beat is, which is way too fast, having a much slower metronome beat. The reason we chose 54 beats a minute, it's the beat that people can maintain the skills they've currently got and learn new skills. What you see with people who are struggling learners is they rush, because rushing covers up the gaps. And we want people to come to slow, calm, learning and mastery of skills.
And I guess that's where it also plays on the breathing rhythm to...
Yep. And so more auditory processing games you can play. Things like making and mimicking sounds. So making your own private language with oohing and humming and ahhing. It's all good exercise around the mouth. It gets the mouth muscles working better. And kids like making stupid sounds. They like being able to have a secret code of making sounds and send secret messages using them. Anything to encourage them. Yodeling was used to communicate across valleys. Very useful skill. You can yodel across the playground. Repetitive songs where one word is changed are really important. They're building language sentence structure, and they're really important. Most business correspondence, for instance, use the same phrases over and over. You just change one or two words. So all those sort of repetition songs, and you want to have ones with good received language. So if you're in English, I tried to find recordings that I thought were of a good standard. On our own YouTube channel, we've put some recordings up by an actress reading. Because if you haven't got good, clear diction, it's much harder for someone to pick up what's being said.
Absolutely.
And games like I Went to Market, and again, you are hopefully using things like the forebrain. You're building up your language recall. I went to market, I bought an apple. The next person says, I went to market, I bought an apple and an alligator. The next person says, I went to market and I bought an apple, an alligator, and a banana. And you work your way through until someone struggles. As a secondary school teacher, I used to play this with my tutor groups. I would know very quickly who had got problems with recall. And now I know that really that should have been a big trigger to start looking at sound and vision processing. Games you can play where you say a two-syllable word and the person has to drop either the syllable at the beginning or the end. So I say catfish, now say it again, but don't say fish. And so the person has to say cat. And again, I've stuck lots of examples in, but you yourselves can go and look for words and make your own lists. And that is very empowering to the student because they're more in control and they can then test you and you can test them back. So dropping the first and last, I've thrown in some more examples. And the other thing is adding letters and sounds. So add on a B at the start of blabs, of labs, makes blabs, and so on. I'm not thinking. Add on a B at the start of lax, make blacks. You're changing a word by adding a letter. And again, it's helping them integrate sound, vision, and things like rhyming words. I say ping, so you're going to say ding, ting, zing, and so on. And again, you can go on and invent your own. If that makes sense. So the more we use and practice language, the more we build up language skills, things we would have been doing, to be honest, in the 60s, because there wasn't much else to do. The more children build up language patterns, because these are the foundations of it. We happy with that?
Mm-hmm.
Good. We will move on to the next exciting game. So we invented a snap game, and the snap game is about integrating vision and sound and relating to the other people around the table. And you again, you don't want to be playing this with hyper competitive people. You put them in a group on their own, or you play with them one-on-one. The children are going to have to match the cards by pattern, no, by shape, number, or color. And so they can have a snap if the colors match. They could have a snap if the number match. They can have a snap if the shape matches. When they turn over the cards and they see they're matching, they've got to say snap number or snap color or snap shape. Or more hideously, they might have to say snap number and shape, whatever it is. So you want to play the game slowly. You want to turn over the cards, give the person whose turn it was to turn the card a chance to say, what are they seeing? Are they seeing any match? And to begin with, it will be slow,
Yeah.
but it gets faster once the child can process. And what it does is it gives them the chance to integrate their sound, their vision, their motor skills. So they're having to see, process, think, and say it. And we have a thing called the Stroop test where people just freeze and they can't say it. And we don't want them to get into a freeze. We want to build up the skill to be able to see, analyze, and say. That makes sense? Some
Yep.
of your clients will be colorblind, so there's not a lot you can do about it. They will find it harder to access, so you might need to cut out the color element. You can take the cards, and one of the things we've done in secondary schools is lay them out on sheets, photocopy the cards, and put them down either side. And you might shout purple, and they have to touch all the purple cards in order, going 1, 1, 2, 2, and they work their way down the side, touching what they're seeing in terms of the cards. And what we found was interesting was that people process different colors at different speeds, and
Yeah.
students found that was quite useful for when they were coming to revise, etc. They had better recall, better processing of certain colors. It's not always the same in everyone, because we have different combinations of rods and cones in our eyes, but basically most people. So we have, as ever, littered the place with our basic eye exercises. And these are aimed to get the 6 muscles around each eye working together properly so that the eyes are stronger. The person can move the eyes properly in the head. And they just need to work down and do the exercises about 5 times a week. If you're doing a lot of computer work, to be honest, I'd stop 3 times a day and do them. You want to get your eyes really focusing well. And if you're on your own, I say to people, go and stand in the middle of the room and move your eyes over and look at one wall, move your eyes over and look at the other wall. You can track around the edge of the room and so on. you can do all the exercise alone, and walls are quite good to really stretch you to focus. If you are going to converge your eyes, I tell people to use both hands so that they're coming to their eyes with both hands. If you use one, it's not unusual for people to have no idea. They're not going to the middle at all. They're going off to one eye. So 2 hands is quite good for keeping that going. So all is going well. We've got the muscles around each eye working equally and well. And when the person is converging, they're seeing one. And when they've done the primitive reflexes, then they can do another exercise, which is truly unthrilling, but they move things, keeping their head still from one side of their midline, following with their eyes, and they're putting down on the other side. I personally use French cheese boxes for this, but if you're not eating enough French cheese,
which we'll certainly do in my household.
in that case, I would collect them because I hand out French cheese boxes with just 5 small items in the box. And the person's just got to pick up and move those 5 small items back and forward with each hand, each eye, and make sure both eyes can cross the midline. This is particularly important for your dyslexics because we don't want those eyes jumping at the midline. And once you've done that, we take you on to using a Brock string. Brock string is a vastly expensive piece of technology, or with basically a piece of string with 3 beads. And what you're doing is you're getting a person to stand up and from the center point under their nose, look down the Brock string, and they should see an optical illusion of an X. And if they're not seeing the X, either the Brock string is not at the midpoint or there is an issue with their eyes, and they usually need to exercise their eyes more. Or just check they're definitely seeing with both eyes, because we need both eyes working equally to hold a sharp focus to send messages to the brain. And if they're seeing an X, this is telling us that both eyes are working. We would probably ask them, do they see one string stronger than the other? If they're not seeing both strings equally, it's telling us one eye is stronger than the other. We go on exercising the eyes until we can see both strings equally and we're seeing a sharp X. It's all written down here. And we want them to be able to move the X up and down the line. So whatever bead they're focusing in, the X should move to that bead. And we want to make sure they can focus near and far so that they can hold a sharp focus at any point. And we're not checking this at all. And this is absolutely fundamental to learning.
So what are the implications of using a Brock string for an individual with a squint or cross-eyed?
So first of all, you're going to exercise the eye muscles until we no longer have odd eye movements. So you think when I started, my son was blind and he had a lazy eye. And we were told, well, that was it really. I ought to accept he was a bit retarded and, you know. Anyway, since we met Darlene, that wasn't an option. And we exercised his eyes and got them to the state where they both worked equally. And basically, you know, we haven't looked back. And he knows his friends of his age are losing vision who weren't told to exercise their eyes. And particularly if, you know, if they hadn't really ever established good vision. So we need to be upright. We need both eyes working equally all the time. And that ought to be our default. And we're just not making sure that's happening in humans. I was told I was astigmatic and I'd never be able to change that. And that was garbage. So I did the eye exercise. I did the primitive reflex exercises. The really big clincher was forebrain. I drove to Oxford and back singing to myself, might have been my singing, but the next day I woke up with fantastic vision. and I've had night vision ever since.
Wow.
And it's that just really all of us can, you don't need the eyes to be fantastic. We need the central 5% to overlap to send equal messages to both, to the brain. And if that's not happening, then we get flickering or we've got complete separation, and our brain cannot function at the level it needs to. And we need to keep maintaining vision for life, hint, hint, so we can get rid of our glasses.
Yeah.
So, and it is joyous. So maintaining binocular vision, it's worth maintaining. The eye exercises, checking with your Brock strings, still all working beautifully. And you can then move up to eccentric circles. And this is more demanding. If you can't do a Brock string, you can't do eccentric circles. But once you've got Brock string and you're seeing the X, you can move up to eccentric circles. And you're putting a pencil or something in between the two sets of circles, and you're bringing it slowly towards your eyes, and in your mind's eye, your eyes and brain are seeing an optical illusion of a third circle in the middle. If your eyes are working really well together with your brain, that third circle is going to be more like a tunnel. You're going to be seeing a real 3D, and the center of it might be right up your nose. When you are asking the person what they're seeing, you want to know, are they seeing 3 or 4? If it's 4, their eyes aren't working well together, we're still flickering. If they're seeing 3 and we've got a sharp 3, you want to know, are they seeing it flat or is it coming out towards them? If it's coming out towards them, you are excited because you really know the brain is now doing the seeing, and it's
Yeah.
doing all sorts of exciting things with what it's seeing.
So
So
how much time can it take for completing the eye exercise to make sure that the eyes are working well and are well connected to the brain?
oh, that depends how badly you started.
Yeah.
So I've got a Down syndrome client I started with a couple of months ago. My expectations are that if next year I've got him to this state, I am going to be a very happy woman.
And what about an
Um,
adult?
hmm?
What about an adult? It's if it's an
So
adult where
it depends on the adult. So some client I was working with Danny Parashak, he couldn't stop texting me because it sprang in within a couple of months. And, it changed his life quite dramatically.
I guess so,
It
yeah.
really, as long as a piece of string, quite literally, that if you've got your primitive reflexes sorted, you've got your sound sorted, and you're doing your eye exercises diligently, we can be tanking through in 3 months with somebody. If it's a major mission to get you to do anything, it might take me a couple of years. And also other stakeholders can disrupt it. I've been having a bit of difficulty with some schools who won't support students. So if your school is saying negative things all the time and saying, you don't need 2 eyes, you need to, rote learn this, or whatever, it's very hard to get the child to stay on track because they're fighting against a hostile situation.
Yeah.
So anyway, so I have all the instructions in here, get you to the point, get them to the point they can see 3 circles. And once they can see 3 circles and they're popping out beautifully, you want to make sure they can dip their head down, dip their head up, dip their head in a circle. And all the time, wherever their eyes are, they're seeing 3D and they're seeing 3 circles. And their eyes don't flicker at any point. At that point, they are ready to go out as a hunter-gatherer and shoot Bambi. But their eyes are working really well, and if they shoot with 2 eyes, they should always hit with the first shot. So when I'm working with compasses, I don't need to be using coping strategies, putting the point at the right point on the circle. I can simply look with my eyes and put the compasses precisely where I want them. My vision is giving me very accurate feedback. I don't
So
think
it's
I
a
could do that.
really good exercise for hand-eye coordination.
Yeah.
That's where you know that it works well.
Yes, I know I'm better and more skilled now than I was as a child. To be honest, post 50, I can half improve my skills. The Victorians love stereoscopes, and there are masses of stereoscopic images online. And once you're skilled, you can just literally bring something towards your, a pencil or whatever, or you can just look at it and you can get up the third image. And we know that humans see vastly more detail when they are working with stereoscopic images than when they're working with just a flat 2D image. So these stereoscopic cameras were used during World War II for intelligence photography. And we were then having banks of people who just interrogated 3D images because they got to see so much more information. And they're quite fun to play with, and it's quite joyous seeing in 3D. You can play around with 3D and build up your speed of using 3D vision. There is research that shows there's a direct link between the speed at which you can change your perception of a shape and your IQ. So if you imagine a cube, you know that you could see that cube with this panel as the front. Or in your mind's eye, you could change it and see this panel as the front. You could just look at this cube and flick backwards and forwards from this panel to this panel. And what you want to be able to do is flick back and forwards about 60 times a minute. The faster your saccadic reaction time, the faster you can visually recall things, the faster you can visually process things. So you are literally flicking backwards and forwards in your mind eye from one image to the other. And when I've been working with secondary school students, when we start, sometimes a few times in a minute, and when we build up to 60 times in a minute, their performance in lessons is just significantly better. And their ability to recall. You can do the same thing with optical illusions. You can be doing rabbit to duck, duck to rabbit, rabbit to duck, duck to rabbit as fast as you can in your mind's eye. And, crone to young woman to crone. You can also do things like take sections of text and not to, 10 lines, and you ask a person to find all the T's, all the V's, all the B's. And when they start, they often miss letters. But after a bit, they're able to see relevant from irrelevant. This activity improves children's ability to do comprehension. They're much more rapidly processing text. They're much more rapidly seeing relevant from irrelevant. If you're working with a recovering dyslexic, it's a very good exercise. It makes them track text. It makes them work with their eye to brain, looking for what it is they need to find. So it builds skills. And of course, seeing relevant from irrelevant is a good foundation skill. So those are all the kind of activities we put in the box to play with and build skills. We suggested to people also that they could do a certain amount of assessment. My assumption, if you're doing an assessment, is you're either a teacher who's already checking numeracy literacy, or you're a therapist who's already checking motor skills, sound, vision. These just add to what you're doing. And for me, the Tansley test shapes are just really important. They tell me a lot about a person. And what you're doing with them is you're showing the person the card for 5 seconds, you're turning it over, and they are then drawing the shape on a piece of paper. And those shapes are very well researched, and we know that it gives an indication of development of the child, because our vision isn't really coming together properly till 7 or 8. So you can see how the shapes relate to child development. For me, when I'm looking at them, it's telling me how well the eyes are working together, how well the motor skills are working. I often photograph the people to think what coping strategies are they using. And because I can't remember, I photograph them. So I put in here an example of a Tansley test. When we're doing it, we often ask people also to draw a line across the page. I want to see whether they do that or whether they're turning or twisting or what else is going. It's a very quick way of seeing coping strategies. And I'm interested in, they might work differently with a ruler than doing it freehand. I'm interested in the shapes. What do we end up with? These aren't bad by my standards. Bom-de-bom. And so if we look at our hero, when we ask the child to draw a line across the page, what he does, he turns the paper and works up from bottom to top. He's not midline crossing. He's finding ways to go across the page without crossing his midline. And that's really useful to know because long term, I need him to be able to work across the midline without coping strategies. We repeated it with a ruler to see if that was different, and it was a bit better. We were interested in the drawings because we're interested in the symmetry. The symmetry tells you a lot about how the two eyes are working together. Where we've got points where it's a bit scrappy, it's telling us the eyes don't focus properly and they don't know where the shapes begin and end. And so when we see the person drawing the shapes, we're seeing a lot of twisting of the body. And that's quite useful to see. We see he works off to one side of his midline. And this all impacts on motor skills and vision. And we're trying in all the exercises to get to the point where we don't have to use all these coping strategies. So the Tansley figure ground tests for me are really, really useful. And some of my Tansley figure ground tests don't come out looking like the shapes at all, which really gives you a very big message about the person's vision and their bilateral integration of motor skills. We've put into the pack 2 jigsaws that we designed ourselves. We just took 2 very boring photographs. We wanted very plain jigsaws, which had a clear top, bottom, middle. Because I've been doing a lot of work analysing jigsaws and found a lot of the ones available in Britain were like Disney type pictures, were all muddled up. You couldn't tell what the top or the bottom was easily. Eastern Europe had got better jigsaws with farmyard scenes, which were much clearer. But we wanted a jigsaw we didn't think the child had seen before, and we wanted to see how well they could make sense of it when we scrambled it up. So we ask a person to sit upright at the table. They are looking at the pieces which I will have scrambled. There's a fair chance some will be face down. And I just want to see how the person operates when putting the jigsaw puzzle together. Are they working with one eye? Do they work with the other? Do they use one hand to make one half the jigsaw, the other hand to make the other half? With this client, it took him a heck of a long time to bring left and right sides together. Kept bringing them and then separating them. Really couldn't understand how left and right came together. And of course, once they've done midline mastery, this is just an absolute piece of cake. We see a lot of touching and tapping as the person is trying to make sense of things and recall it. Because if your 2 eyes don't work together, visually you only have a 5-second window to send messages to the brain. So there's a lot of talking and touching and tapping going on. And so I take umpteen photographs as the person twists and turns. I can't remember if I put them in here. As I'm busy trying to work out what on earth they're up to. We put in as well memory cards. And for us, we usually start with 2 memory cards. The person can take as long as they want to memorize them. We then turn them over, but we ask which card is, when I turn it over, I choose the card and we'll say, what's that card? What's that card? And they've got to, in this case, say a lemon or a bucket of paint. If the client takes control, they then use their coping strategies, and I don't want them to use their coping strategies. And I will go on laying out an extra card each time until the person falters and has a problem with recalling them. I do sometimes get a bit bored and disrupt them slightly to show them that often what's happening before they've got visual recall is that they're going to be looking at the cards and going apple, orange, banana, pear, apple, orange, banana, pear, apple, orange, banana, pear. They're not even looking at them, they're just reciting them and bypassing their visual system with auditory coping strategies. And then if you ask for the cards out of sequence, the person is having to go banana. They really have to go through the list from beginning to end. What we want to do is get to the point where they can visually recall them. And at that point, they have much better understanding, much better, well, you can't really unsettle them. They can recall what they've seen. When I was a senior teacher, I saw often the problem that my students with most anxiety were the ones who were going apple, orange, banana, pear, apple, orange, banana, pear. They worked incredibly long hours to memorize using coping strategies, whereas those students that learned visually were much faster learners and got the high grades, and they didn't have the anxiety. So I think really important to get it to the point where we definitely got visual learning. As well as the cards to copy patterns for training, we also put in a couple of patterns for people to copy so you can see how they work when copying patterns. What often happens is a person might make a jigsaw puzzle with one eye, and when they come to pattern recognition, they change their manner completely and they work with the other eye. Once you've got integration of the visual system, then they'll use both eyes to work out all problems. But the way the brain works and the way they've adapted their coping strategies is they may use different eyes to do different tasks. That is quite interesting. And so doing several different cognitive activities and seeing how they're working and taking photographs of it is very useful. And again, exactly the same as with the jigsaw, you're keeping some sort of record. We have also added in a card with letters. And in Britain, what's been happening is we've been so emphasizing phonics that when we show a card with letters where the children can't manipulate, all they can do is they've got to look and they've got to suggest as many words as they can think of, they can spell with those letters. And those are the 10 most popular letters in the English alphabet. You ought to be able to make about 200-300 words, or at least more than 5. And what we're seeing is if the children haven't got proper visual development, they are thinking of words they can spell, then seeing if the letters are there, and then going, you haven't put the W in. Okay. And it's because they can't manipulate, they can't visually manipulate anything. They're not really literate, they are decoders. And at a proper level of literacy, you can manipulate the letters. You can see all sorts of new words. You can play with them in your mind's eye. And so that is useful. And we're getting scores somewhere between 0 and 10. And as I've said before, for us, it's very useful to see how well someone can throw a ball across their midline. If they can manage one, we sometimes ask them to do 2. To see whether there's a point where they just cannot cross their midline. And that's that. So I need to just go and answer the telephone, not telephone, the door. So I'm going to run out of the room for 2 seconds, answer the door, and then I'll be back.
There is a question here, how or who can support with primitive reflexes, sound and visual processing? How would school do this? And could parents get support privately if there are one place or separate specialists to support? Not sure where to start. Well, I guess it depends on where you are. We are at the moment functioning from Australia, and Charlotte is in UK. But the first thing is that you have to find someone who is a tomatis professional near you, who can work with you remotely or face to face. In Sydney, I'm based in Sydney, so people can come to us, and I work with Australia anyway, and we have some professionals as well here around Australia who can help you. So the first thing is to do sound therapy, as Charlotte was saying, and to do with a tomatis professional. You can look at our website, tomatis.com.au, and you'll find the professional near you. If you are around the world on this call, you can go onto the tomatis.com website and find a professional near you as well. So that's the first thing to do. Then you'll also have to work with primitive reflexes. So primitive reflexes can be worked through occupational therapists with who do sensory integration, or you can also look at people who like chiropractic. Chiropractors and osteopaths can work also on primitive reflexes. And visual processing, you need to get to see a behavioral optometrist. So yes, you need to have several professionals around you. Some professionals can offer all the services in their own clinic or centers, but it depends on where you are. And that's where, and if you have questions, you can send us an email to Charlotte, to me. We will send you an email with all those references, and then you can connect with us. But knowing that also that webinar is recorded, and you'll be receiving it within the next 2 to 3 days in your mail. So Charlotte, thank you so much. That's been an amazing session. You've answered a lot of questions because I've asked them throughout the training, and it's been a very, very informative, even for me, to continue to learn and to understand how the mind and body mastery box works. If you want to access it in Australia, you'll be able to thank you, Wendy. Fabulous. I'm exhausted, she says. Yeah, it's been lots of information that you had to go through. But at the same time, yes, you'll be receiving the recording in the next few days, so you'll be able to review it and to understand and start to process and integrate the information that Charlotte has been giving us so gracefully tonight and today for people who are around the world. So in Australia, you will be able to access the box through us or Amazon as well. But we'll be the point of posting and sending the boxes through Australia and to New Zealand. Now, if you can contact me or contact Charlotte if you are around the world to be able to receive the box. We will Bendel will send it around the world if it's in America and the rest of the world. And Charlotte, you are the one sending it from UK, and Nicolas is sending it in Europe. Yeah. So yes, we have different places where we can function, but so you have England, you have or UK, you have Italy, which will distribute throughout Europe, even Eastern Europe.
Yes.
Okay.
It's nothing. Britain is absolutely gridlocked.
Then the rest of the world outside of Australia, New Zealand, it will be through Mendel through China, from China directly. And if it's in Australia and New Zealand, it will be through us, Sydney, so Tomatis Australia. Yeah, Charlotte, a big thank you. It's been an amazing session. I think we will have you sometimes more. If people want to do some more training, we might be able to organize like a 4-hour session, or if we have lots of people, we'll bring Charlotte over. if they are interested in getting the training to understand better to how to do an assessment using those tools, because as you've seen, the brain and body mastery box is full of goodies that we can use in so many ways. So yeah, it's just to learn how to use them appropriately, and regarding also the age of the child,
Yes.
because this is very important too. Not to start too early, but and then yeah, being aware of when we can start. I know we have some parents of adults as well here that maybe we can look at into how we can go assess adults to find out what's missing, what's working, etc., etc. So we're going to dive even more and more into that toolbox, which is going to be massive tool for to do assessments.
Super. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you to you. And all your knowledge, because it's you are synthesizing so many years of research and understanding and putting that together in that book. So it's been an amazing it's going to become an amazing tool, and we are
Thank
just
you.
at the beginning of it. Yeah,
Very much so.
yeah.
Yes, Leeds University said they'd like to do a project on it.
Fantastic.
So, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Good.
Right.
No,
Thank you, everyone. So if you want to, we'll send you an email shortly with Charlotte's details if you want to connect with her, or you'll be able to connect with me in this part of the world, in Australia, South Hemisphere. And thank you so much for attending this session. And hopefully we'll hear from you soon. Charlotte, thank you. Thank you very much. Yes.
Yeah.
All the best. Bye.
Thanks. Same to you. All the best.
Thank you very much.